welcome to a special knitting machine episode of the AdoreKnit Podcast. I'm your host, Steph, also known as the Knitting Samurai, and I promised a while back that when I got my Sentro knitting machine, I would devote an entire episode to talking about that. So I'm not sure. I've got some videos of me doing different parts of the knitting machine process that I will share with you. And then I want to share some FOs and... Okay, so here is what I got. I ordered it from Amazon. It's just a basic knitting machine. It has 48 needles around. It came with some trial yarn, and the one came without directions, so I figured it out based on YouTube videos. But then I ordered a second one and read through those directions and returned it. So just FYI, that's what happened there. A hook and a needle came with it, really cheap plastic tapestry needle and crochet hook, but they are extremely useful. So first, I cranked this one this morning. The hats are pretty easy to do, right? So I have been using my worsted weight acrylic yarns and working my way through it. So this, you may recall me talking about the elephant I knit for Tristan. This is some sport weight acrylic yarn held double, and then the rest of it is worsted weight acrylic. I would say these hats are an excellent way. These are all child size, FYI. So for mine, I am using worsted weight, and I'm going for 80 rounds to do a child size. And they fit my guys' giant heads really well. So I feel like that will cover, they could be a little big on kindergartners and first graders, and then they'll be good for up to 4th grade is what I'm aiming for. So that's what these are. These two are a little bit shorter, a little shallower. So I have made dozens and dozens of these hats, and I will tell you that on Saturday I cranked 6 or 7 of the hats, and the last 2 days I've been like, why does my arm hurt right here, like so bad right there? And then this morning I started cranking again. I was like, oh, it's from cranking, it's my tricep muscle. So, you know, if you're looking for a good workout for your bye-byes, this would really work well for that. I have had some frustration. So there was definitely a learning curve. I want to say I threw away the first 4 or 5 hats that I made just because they were not up to snuff. And there are hats that I've made 2 or 3 times. I tried to do one this morning and something was just off about it. I have a very hard time doing smaller stripes, and I don't know if I put more time. I've probably spent 40 hours cranking, maybe 60. Okay, so I don't know if I put more time into it, if doing small color changing stripes would be easier, but as it is right now, I can only do big stripes because it gets really messy in between small stripes. I drop stitches. Dropping stitches happens a lot for me, a lot more than I would like. I'm not sure why. There is a tension on the machine, and sometimes I can go 10 tubes and have no drop stitches. And then like this morning, I knit the same hat I don't know how many times because I just kept dropping stitches. So sometimes it's cranky, sometimes it's finicky and crotchety, and sometimes it's good. So when you crank a hat, what you get is this long tube, and you cinch up one end, and it's like that, right, on both ends. You grab the end of the string, you pull it tight, and then you weave it in. And I have been tacking down the 2 ends to each other just because the hat that I made for Tristan, when he figured out he could turn it like this, he started playing with it, and it's way less functional for them as kids to figure out how to get it back into a hat shape and put it on his head. So yeah, so here's another one. This is a mix of different weights, and you could see I had some slip stitches in through here. There was definitely some problem going on in there. So that'll be the inside of this hat. And not that kids really like brown hats, but this one you can see it just looks a little bit messy. So I'll put that on the inside, and The outside looks fine. I do make sure that I at least have a good run of like 40 rounds without slip stitches or mistakes, because no one wants to get a hat that has issues with it. So I've sent 25 hats off. I'm going to send some more. So I picked 3 schools in northern Maine that I had connections to those towns. One was the town I was born in. One was the town where the Veterans Hospital is, where my grandfather lived for 10 years in that hospital at the end of his life. And the third one is where my grandmother is currently in a nursing home. So I just knew, I know the weather up there, I know those areas, I'm comfortable. So I contacted some. Well, first I went online, I found the guidance teachers at the different elementary schools. I sent them emails. All 3 responded within 48 hours. I sent the emails on Saturdays. One of them responded that day. Yeah, they responded and said, yes, absolutely, we'll take anything you have to donate. So if you're thinking about cranking through your stash and getting rid of acrylic yarn, there's definitely a need up in Maine. And that's all I'll say. I'm going to send a second package to one of the teachers, one of the guidance schools, just because I don't know, I feel like they could use a few more. So, what else do I have to say? Yeah, it's been great. I've busted through, I have no idea how many yards of fabric, but I know that the first package weighed 2 pounds. I've got it somewhere in the shipping labels. I should check how many ounces the packages are, because all I'm putting on it is a shipping envelope, but there's no padding, so there's really no weight to that shipping envelope that I'm using. So that would be fun to figure that out. I think I will calculate that. Maybe if I'm on the ball and I did calculate it, I'll put it right here. How many ounces, how many pounds of yarn I've used, how many miles. So that's great. I had not entered a lot of the acrylic yarn I had into my stash, because for some reason, I know people used to say sock yarn doesn't count as stash. In my head, acrylic yarn didn't count as stash. I only had to pay attention to the pricey investment that I made for some reason. So I might not see big changes in my numbers on the stash, but I have more space. I cleaned out a big box of acrylic yarns. I still have a ton of cotton that I either need to knit, or I can make panels with that machine, and I could sew the panels together. I will tell you that slip stitches, snag stitches, whatever, is extremely frustrating to deal with, and having been a hand knitter for how many years? 15 years? 16? Whatever. I'm not suddenly going to switch to being a machine knitter. I don't feel the need to buy a sock tube machine. Now that I've done this, cranking really isn't for me. I know that spinning yarn isn't for me either. Just give me the finished yarn and I will work on it, or I will knit it. So I feel like what I love about knitting does not involve the product. It involves the process of knitting. So, yeah, I don't expect, once the acrylic's gone, I don't expect to use the knitting machine much, if ever. It's going to go in the closet, and that'll be that. The boys had fun with it. I will say that. They're 5 and 8, and with supervision, they could both do it. I just needed to I needed to get them started, and then I needed to make sure that they continuously turned in the same direction, because their arms would get tired and they go the other way, and the minute you go the other way, it causes the stitches to pop off the needles. So, and it's kind of hard to get them back on. Definitely time consuming, maybe not hard, but slow and tedious, and I don't enjoy that. So back to the cotton yarn, I'm either going to, yeah, I'm not going to crank panels, just because, yeah, it would save a little time, but I'd rather hand knit some nice chevron blankets. So I'm still gonna have a bin downstairs of the cotton acrylic yarns, and I realized when I went down there, so backing up, my goal initially was to work through 3 bins of acrylic yarn that are being stored in the basement. When I went down there, it's 1 bin of acrylic yarn, 1 bin of cotton acrylic blend, and then 1 bin of alpaca yarn. I could crank the alpaca yarn, but again, that's, I'm not ready to part with that yet. So the knitting machine is gonna go back into the closet once I finish this last round of hats. I've got, I don't know, probably 4 more skeins worth, like full skeins worth to crank. And I've been getting, for the size of those skeins, I think I've been getting 3 or 4. They're the big sugar wheel Hobby Lobby acrylic cakes that are 460 yards. So I bet I don't need to do the math. You don't need to do the math either. I'm guessing I get about 100. I get a hat about 100 yards. That's my like approximate rough math. So I think I have another 8 hats of worth of cranking out there, and then I'm gonna be done. So it's been a fun little experiment. Some of these hats are like so adorable that I want to keep them, and I could hold some fingering yarns that I love double, but I'm telling you, the annoyance of drop stitches makes me so crazy that it's just not worth it. See, look, so this one has to be worn this way. So anyways, all right, that's my story about the knitting machine, the Sentro knitting machine. I would give it a solid C+, B-, somewhere in there. Take it with a grain of salt. Your mileage may vary. That's my opinion on the knitting machine. $50, $55 from Amazon. So, okay, take care.
Start off your project. So, lining up the white one at the front and making sure your counter is set to 0. It's fairly simple. You go under 1, crank a little, go behind, under, behind, under, behind. You want to line up the white one as your start. You want to 0 out your row counter, and then you're just simply going to weave behind and in front. Every other needle here you want to catch as you slowly crank around. And this is essentially your cast on, and when you get to the end of your, whoops, missed that one. When you get to the end of your project, you're gonna grab that tail that's hanging down in the center. Right here, you're gonna grab this and cinch it up nice and tight, and that's it. Bind it off, tie it off, however you choose. So once I get back to the white one where I started, I'm gonna make sure it goes underneath it. I'm gonna pass the yarn through my holder here, and then I'm gonna tension the yarn either with the provided tensioner, or since mine broke, I'm using my hand. And there you go. Let the cranking begin, right?
It's nice.
Roland thought it looked like a castle.
Yeah, see? Hi. Hi. Stop. Hi.
Keep going.
See how it means it looks like a castle? Or it looks like a castle. Or it looks like a crown. It looks like a crown more like to me.
Yeah.
It's getting big. 28.
28. So we're gonna go to 53, and then we'll do the outside.
What does that mean? That it's 29. We'll connect when I get to 53. I know.
this long tube and you cinch up one end and so it's like that, right? On both ends. You grab the end of the string, you pull it tight, and then you weave it in. And I have been tacking down the two ends to each other just because the hat that I made for Tristan, when he figured out he could turn it like this, he started playing with it, and it's way less functional for them as kids to figure out how to get it back into a hat shape and put it on this.